where the government is considering declaring a state of emergency in two of the country's major urban centers to curb a spike in coronavirus cases. The measure will likely come into effect ahead of a week-long holiday that starts next week. Infections are increasing around Osaka and Tokyo. Experts say more contagious variants are largely to blame. Officials in Osaka Prefecture confirmed a record 1,242 new cases on Wednesday. The governor has asked the central government to issue a new state of emergency for the Western Prefecture, its third since the pandemic started.
We want large-scale events to be suspended and facilities closed to stop people from gathering. We're asking the government to allow us to take more stringent measures.
Officials are considering asking department stores, shopping malls, and amusement parks to close temporarily. Bars and restaurants could be asked to further shorten their business hours.
If we have to stop serving alcohol, that would be really tough. Business is usually good at this time of year. If sales drop to almost nothing, it would be frustrating.
Two neighboring prefectures, Hyogo and Kyoto, have also requested a state of emergency. The Tokyo government made a formal request as well on Wednesday when the daily tally topped 800 in the capital. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide says the central government will work closely with local officials.
We want to take a close look at their requests and make a decision by the end of the week.
Across Japan, more than 5,200 new infections were confirmed on Wednesday. It's the first time in 3 months the daily tally has topped 5,000. Now, the World Health Organization says coronavirus variants first detected in the UK and South Africa continue to spread across the globe. The WHO said as of Tuesday, the UK variant has been confirmed in 137 countries and territories, up 5 from the previous week. The South African variant has been reported in 85 countries and territories, up 3. A variant first detected in Brazil has been confirmed in 52 locations, unchanged from last week. The WHO has designated the 3 types as variants of concern, as their genetic mutations could affect immunity and virus transmission. The WHO says the number of new coronavirus cases is on the rise worldwide. It says the spread of variants and increasing face-to-face contact is leading to more cases among people who are relatively young. Moving on to an issue that soured relations between Japan and South Korea. A court in Seoul has dismissed a lawsuit filed by people referred to as wartime comfort women and their families seeking damages from Japan. It's a major change, of course, from 3 months ago when the same court ordered Japan to pay compensation to plaintiffs in a separate lawsuit. 20 plaintiffs sued the Japanese government for about $3 million. No Japanese government officials attended the proceedings, saying the lawsuit should be dismissed on the basis of sovereign immunity. That's a concept under international law in which a state is immune from the civil jurisdiction of a court in another country. The Seoul court cited the legal doctrine in its ruling.
I am very disappointed and very confused.
The ruling said some of the women accepted financial aid from an institution funded by Japan following an agreement struck in 2015. The deal confirmed the issue had been resolved finally and irreversibly, and the court said that agreement is still valid. But in January, the same court ordered Japan to pay damages in a separate case. January's ruling puzzled President Moon Jae-in, who indicated a solution should be found through diplomatic efforts. In February, the 3 judges who were in charge of the first case were replaced, and the new judges determined late last month Japan could not be forced to cover the legal fees of the plaintiffs. They said seizing assets belonging to the Japanese government to cover those fees could violate international law.
South Korea has failed to follow international law or bilateral agreements that has brought relations between our countries to the most strained point yet. Japan will continue to strongly urge South Korea to take appropriate measures based on our consistent stance while maintaining diplomatic channels.
The South Korean Foreign Ministry says it's refraining from commenting on the ruling while studying it in detail. The legal case could continue as the plaintiffs' counsel said they would consult with their clients and decide whether or not to appeal. Next, leaders from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations will meet on Saturday to discuss how to respond to the situation in Myanmar. The ASEAN Secretariat says a summit-level meeting will be held in the Indonesian capital, Jakarta. Myanmar's military leader, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, reportedly plans to attend. The military may be hoping to win ASEAN support for its plan to hold general elections after lifting a year-long state of emergency. But some protesters in Myanmar say the senior general does not represent the country. Others question whether ASEAN states approve of Myanmar's return to military rule. Documents obtained by NHK suggest some ASEAN members hope to discuss the release of key officials, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and the need for negotiations to end the unrest. While as the Myanmar military continues its crackdown, young protesters are increasingly turning to social media to stay ahead of the security forces and out of danger. Our next report shows they're proving to be an essential part of the country's digital resistance.
This man is part of a small group of demonstrators holding a pop-up protest against Myanmar's military coup. They coordinate using social media, employing security and encryption software. The military regularly shuts down the internet, but they stay in close contact whenever they can.
The internet came back on at 9 a.m.
As soon as the connection is back, he sends out details of the demo. The time and place come last to prevent the military and police from finding out.
When we stage a guerrilla-like march in a town, I post it on social media. That way, people get to know what's happening and can support us. The military uses guns. We have to be smart and use our brains.
These protesters wearing white robes are part of a 10,000-strong resistance group that includes doctors and medical students. A group leader has formed a digital team made up of IT-savvy young members known as keyboard fighters. Their mission is to share information about where the military and police are deployed. They send out scouts to gather reconnaissance and report back.
What's the situation? Security forces seem to be holding this street today. Let's get everybody to disperse.
They let the protest teams know in real time so they can avoid dangerous locations. They also record the protests, looking for evidence to counter the military's propaganda. This video is edited from drone images shot when protesters faced off against security forces. They suspect security personnel infiltrated the demonstrators and set off a sound grenade to try to break up the march.
We make the most of our strong points and abilities. I believe we can make contributions to win this battle.
Myanmar citizens living overseas are also joining the digital resistance. New York-based student P. Sohain gathers and visualizes data on the civilians being killed. It's easy to see the majority was still young. He hands out leaflets in front of the UN headquarters, calling for support for the protesters.
Every action matters these days, so yeah. All of my people back in Myanmar, their voices kind of silent, so I have to speak out for them.
But back in Myanmar, members of the digital resistance are as vulnerable as anyone else on the front line. This man witnessed a fellow protester shot dead.
The bullet came from the front. If it had not hit him, it could have hit me.
The keyboard can be a powerful weapon, but it's not enough to overturn the coup. Some protesters increasingly say it's time to take up arms. Myanmar's spiral of violence is far from over.
Back here in Japan, Prime Minister Suga has sent a ritual offering to Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo to mark the start of its Spring Festival. The shrine is dedicated to Japan's war dead. Those remembered include leaders convicted of war crimes after World War II. Suga sent a potted plant to the shrine on Wednesday under his title of Prime Minister, but he's not expected to visit in person. He made a similar offering for the Autumn Festival last October. The Chief Cabinet Secretary said the government is not in a position to comment on Suga's actions as a private individual.
The Prime Minister will make an appropriate judgment on whether or not to visit the shrine.
Suga's offering prompted swift criticism from Japan's neighbors.
Yasukuni Shrine honors Class A war criminals from World War II, and we have firmly opposed the improper actions by Japanese politicians. We call on Japan to squarely acknowledge and reflect on the history of its aggression and win the trust of its neighbors and the international community with its actions.
South Korea's foreign ministry issued a spokesperson's comment saying the shrine glorifies Japan's history of colonial oppression and war of aggression. It urges Japanese leaders to squarely face history, demonstrate through action their humble reflection and sincere remorse for Japan's past history. Moving now to the weather. A wide area of Japan is set to have summer-like temperatures on Thursday. Our meteorologist John Thuneau has the forecast in our World Weather Report.
Hello, we saw another beautiful day across Japan where we saw temperatures definitely moving up to what's above normal for this time of year. And we will see at least another day of that as high pressure continues to bring in this nice pattern. Highs are going to be in the upper 20s in Tokyo coming up on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that. This is definitely a few degrees above what we're supposed to be for this time of year. We'll come back to reality by Friday. Still on the warmer side. I mean, we are in the latter part of April, and that's going to be reflective as we head toward the weekend. Some showers and some clouds will be on the increase as we go toward the weekend, so be on the lookout for that. Meanwhile, as we hop over toward Europe, speaking of rain, we've got a system up toward the Scandinavian peninsula that's rolling through, and another low, you can see that's spinning right into the western areas of Russia. That'll be the case not just for Wednesday, but also into Thursday as well, but not really cold. It's just going to be wet in places like Stockholm and Moscow, Kyiv at 19, 15 Vienna. But notice highs will be in the teens for many locations, even up to the 20s into Lisbon and Athens. So again, we're going to be dealing with more spring-like weather, but it's going to be on the wet side for the central and eastern portions of the continent. Speaking of rain, we've got a cold front that brought some really frigid air back toward the west, but setting up for some strong thunderstorms up into the northeastern areas of the United States. So be on the lookout for that as we go through Wednesday. And we are talking on temperatures finally recovering. We had morning lows below freezing for the past couple of mornings. We head into Thursday. Temperatures are going to go from the single digits to the teens in many locations. Chicago looking at 14, 19, Atlanta. Drier along the eastern seaboard once that front moves through. But we have another system coming through. That's going to help develop the possibility of some snow into Denver with a high of 9 as we go through Thursday. So be on the lookout for that. That's a look at your forecast. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
Fans and officials welcome the end of the proposed Super League of Europe's top soccer teams after 10 of the 12 teams pulled out. In Myanmar, security forces in Dawei fired bullets near anti-military protests that included high school students and a reporter. A South Korean court dismissed a legal case brought by Korean women seeking damage payments from Japan for being forced into sex work during World War II. And in India, hospital officials say 22 patients died after their breathing machine's oxygen supply failed.
The U.S. Attorney General has launched an investigation into whether the Minneapolis Police Department engages in a pattern of using excessive force after the former officer, Derek Chauvin, was found guilty of murdering George Floyd. Unauthorized protests are taking place across Russia to demand the release of the hunger-striking opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. 1,000 arrests have been reported so far. Scenes of desperation are being repeated across India as it grapples with a ferocious second wave of COVID-19. The country has again reported its highest number of daily cases and deaths. And football fans have been celebrating after plans for a European Super League collapsed after a significant backlash. Only 2 of the 12 clubs who announced this, Barcelona and Real Madrid, haven't pulled out.